The Scandinavian cliché of a liberal, open society doesn't hold true in Denmark these days. Recently, politicians have taken a fairly hardline stance in terms of immigration, and this not from a far-right party, but from a centre-left party. Denmark's been in the news recently as the UK looks at the way that they're handling immigration. Here's some quotes about the Danish asylum and refugee policies. Asylum seekers must apply for protection upon arrival. The Danish government aims to reduce the number of asylum seekers through strict policies. Recent laws classify all refugee stays as temporary, regardless of their need for protection. Areas with high concentrations of immigrants are designated as ghettos, leading to restrictions on housing and social services. Cultural integration. Policies include mandatory cultural training for immigrant children and restrictions on traditional religious clothing. If we want to presume that the reason that people want to have a desire to come to a country is because they see that it is well run, it is ordered, it is lawful, and you can, through work, make your way in that country, then you should protect the culture, the values of that country. If you open up the borders and have ne'er-do-wells, and people who really need help, but in the mix, ne'er-do-wells, people who would do you harm on every level, some people in fact who may hate you and your country, then that's insane, because ultimately you will end up with a culture and a country which is destroyed. In fact, it is no longer a country. So you've got to protect the borders. You've got to ensure that who comes in not only is of reasonable character as far as you can judge, but also is someone who can integrate, is able to integrate. I think I can see a thread running through the reasoning of the Danish government. Learn a language, go and be trained in terms of the culture. Again, that can look harsh, it can look like quite dictatorial, but if you think about it for a second, how are people meant to integrate if they don't know the language? They need to know the language. And also, what are they integrating to? What's the common goal? Well, it's values driven for any team, organisation, and of course, therefore, country. That's the culture, or at least it forms part of the culture. And if you think of the flip side, people don't learn a language. They don't understand what this country is about, so they conform and live in these so-called ghettos. And if that's the case, what you have, or can have, is a series of hermetically sealed enclaves abutting each other, but never the twain shall meet. And what do you have then? You have no real strength in diversity. You know that phrase, diversity is our strength, that's trotted out as a platitude by politicians in different sets of circumstances? It can be, but there's got to be enough of an overlap. First of all in language, but then also in terms of cultures, which is values driven. If not, then diversity isn't a strength if it's too diverse. What you can have are groups who never really interact, never really overlap in terms of common goal, common purpose, and indeed they can end up disliking each other, partly because they don't understand each other. Where I think there could be an issue, a big issue, is about retrospective processing. And by that I mean, what about the people who are already in any given country, not just Denmark? How do you deal with them in a moral, ethical, humane way? That requires a lot of thought and attention. And the people who give it their attention need to be thinking morally, ethically, humanely. When we compare the Danish immigration model with that of the UK's, it becomes, in my opinion at least, quite obvious that the UK model is akin to a farce. The script for a farce, in fact. But the script was turned down by the production company who were producing or going to produce the farce because the script itself was too farcical. In other words, the UK's policy is an absolute joke. Minerva, Roman goddess of justice, wisdom and law. Are the Danes wise in their approach? I guess that's the 64 million krona question.